Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. A lot of people have compared Kyle Rittenhouse to George Zimmerman. Well, now the two killers have something else in common. They're both begging for money. In Rittenhouse's case, he says he needs the money for legal expenses, though it's not for anything that someone's doing to him, it's because he intends to start suing people. These are legal expenses that he's volunteering for this time. Why? He says he wants to hire some lawyers so he can go after the media and celebrities. Of course, he makes sure to name black celebrities like Whoopi Goldberg and LeBron James because they hurt his feelings calling him a murderer. And if this sounds like George Zimmerman's little grift, that's exactly what it is. Gee, maybe Rittenhouse would prefer it if everyone called him an illegal gun-toting mass-shooting double killer instead. And if Rittenhouse begging for cash sounds familiar, it should, because he's done it before. The last time some inbred morons were dumb enough to give Rittenhouse some money, it predictably turned into a total cluster foul-up. And at last report, Rittenhouse was ripping his own shady defense lawyers and criticizing them publicly and fighting with them to see who would get the $2 million in bail money that all of his stupid supporters gave him. These heroes of the white right showed everyone exactly what they are. Petty bandits fighting over a cut of the loot. Just goes to show there's no honor among thieves. These racists are all too aware that there's plenty of dumb money out there. Lots of suckers bored every minute. You can see them usually with MAGA hats. Just claim that you're doing something because it will defend some murderer or violent criminal, especially if they harmed a black person or someone advocating for black people, and why these white conservatives will be tripping over their jars of moonshine and mayonnaise to give you money. White supremacy has perfected a cottage industry in anti-black violence. Just do something to harm some black person or some other non-black person who seems to be allied with black folks, and yep, you'll have a whole bunch of people coming out of the woodwork asking how can they write you a check or give you some money. By the way, the white left and their bootlick companions, they do the same thing. When they claim to be standing up for some black person or someone who the white right has targeted or killed, and that people should give them money. Both sides of the same coin. But the inbred racists who support the white right, they don't care. They get plenty of state mental health disability money anyway. And to them, as long as they think that it will own the libs or get a rise out of black people, then they'll gladly throw away what few pennies they don't have. The white right has made a nice little cottage industry out of rage donations. Kyle Rittenhouse should change his name to Griftenhouse. He's talking about suing the media and celebrities, black celebrities, who called him a murderer. Apparently this jackass didn't pay attention to Sarah Palin's nuisance suit that got laughed out of court. He doesn't seem to understand how defamation of character actually works. See, the reason that this is going on is because it was that whole cave-in to those little Covington reprobates a couple of years back. The white media outlets were so eager to make those nuisance suits go away, even though the charges were being knocked down by the judge, but in a way, the white media is getting what they dished out. Because just like what they did with Michael Jackson and Bill Cosby, when these white media outlets caved in to the parasites looking for a payoff, they enabled the white right to push the lie that, well, there must have been something to the accusations, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have paid them off. And this has emboldened the failed beauty pageant contestant and failed VP candidate Sarah Palin and other right-wing trolls like Kyle Griftenhouse to pull the same con. And of course, you have right-wing hate radio, you got the online white supremacist claverns, and of course, false news's own Tucker Carlson, or as I like to call him, Moscow's man on the scene, who are trying to get all of the clicks and views that they can out of their little teenage psychopath. These idiots are desperate for something, anything that they can point to as being an L. And black people, we're used to losing because the society is completely rigged against us, but for white supremacists, it's totally different. They expect to win because the society has been artificially engineered to make sure that they do, and they have absolutely no problem invoking their white privilege as their first resort to get what they want. Now, when we lose, it's just another day in the life, but when they lose, that hits them like an atomic bomb, as if the sky had suddenly changed from blue to green with black polka dots. To them, the laws of nature have gone awry if they lose because that just doesn't happen, especially when it's something that reminds them that white privilege is not absolute. They need to be constantly reminded and reassured that white privilege trumps everything because they all depend on it for every crumb of their daily bread. They know white supremacy is a con and that it can fall at any second, and they desperately want to be reassured that there are some dyed-in-the-wool hardcore anti-black racists who will make sure that it stays standing at least for another day. They want these displays of white fiat to be egregious and blatant and even shocking, because to them that reinforces how solid white privilege is. So that's the reason why they've made a cause celeb out of Kyle Rittenhouse. To them, they're looking and going, hey, it doesn't matter. As long as he kills some people, murders some people, as long as we can have something that we can point to and say that we got an L, even if it's meaningless, even if it's a clown who makes a complete fiasco out of his own legal fund. Doesn't matter if he's a laughingstock, just as long as we can say, well, he killed some people. He did something. He struck a blow for white supremacy. Rittenhouse knows this. That's the reason why he makes sure that he pals around with the biggest white supremacists that he can find. Hey, if you got some convention put together by dyed-in-the-wool racists, Rittenhouse will be there. Say you got Tucker Carlson, who loves to talk about white replacement and other nonsense. Rittenhouse will be talking to him too, smiling that buck-toothed grin of his. This chubby-faced squirrel, who, by the way, has been keeping a real low profile since his trial ended. He hasn't been very eager at all to be seen. Oh, he'll go ahead and make himself a nice little shock appearance, a surprise appearance on Tucker Carlson's show. Or he'll go ahead and do a pop-up appearance at CPAC or Turning Points USA or something. He'll go ahead and do one of those surprise appearances. But as far as actually being out on the streets, he knows better than that. Oh yeah, he's lost his fervor to protect any cities or towns, and so have the rest of his buddies. No more running around calling themselves protecting any businesses for them. Oh no, as far as they're concerned, they're out of the store or shop protecting business because they know that a lot of the folks that they've been aiming their guns at are ready for them. But that's not to say that the ambushes have stopped. Because I posted for you on Twitter how in Portland, Oregon, you had this one white supremacist who actually walked up to a group of Black Lives Matter protesters, shot one woman in the head, and shot at least 4 others. The police are protecting his identity, and they're already pushing a narrative of, this could have been a case of self-defense, you know. They're doing everything they can to cover for him, because this is part of what is supposed to be a counteroffensive against the tide of justice that has been flowing for the last couple of years. This is the Rittenhouse effect. This is exactly what the white supremacists and law enforcement have wanted. This is what they've been trying to encourage. Every white supremacist should feel themselves deputized to go and kill somebody, either a black person or some white person who appears to be allied with black people, or advocating with black folks, I should say. We stay away from the ally word. But if they see you holding up a BLM sign, if you're a white person, as far as they're concerned, we got to make an example out of you. And that's the Rittenhouse effect. When you have these gun-toting scumbags who run around committing the killings that the police can't do. These white supremacists, they hate taking an L. And speaking of which, you've probably heard that 3 Fox News viewers got convicted on hate crimes charges. By the way, not surprisingly, Fox News isn't talking about the federal hate crimes trial for the murderers of Arbery. Fox News ain't talking about that at all as far as they're concerned. Let's talk about Ukraine. Let's talk about crime in Chicago. Let's talk about the man on the moon, but we're not talking about that Arbery verdict. Let's talk about Canada. Let's talk about anything other than the Arbery verdict. Yeah, when they take an hard L like that, they're like, let's move on to something else. I really don't have anything in the way of criticism to say regarding the family of Arbery. They stayed on the DA's butts and they stayed on the Fed's butts, especially the mother. And the family was also involved as well. It was a group effort. So while I don't necessarily like the company that they keep as far as their legal counsel goes, the family's tenacity and focus more than made up for that. I don't know if they listen to the black media or follow the black grassroots or not, but I do know that they didn't get out there talking any of that forgiveness crap or the love of Jesus nonsense. Or talking about how we don't think that this was racial at all. They didn't do any of that garbage. They stayed on their square, they stayed focused, and that's why they got the result that they got. Despite their legal counsel's advice, no doubt. After the state trial, they stayed engaged with the federal hate crimes trial. And they wanted to make sure that these bastards would actually go on trial because they were confident that the evidence was overwhelming and they were right. And when they saw that Joe Biden's Department of Injustice was trying to cut the murderers a break, the family stepped in and they made a high-profile objection, one big enough, loud enough, and visible enough that it couldn't be ignored. They told the whole world that the animals who murdered Ahmaud Arbery have to get the hardest time there is. They made it a point. No, we're not talking about just these guys getting convicted. We want to make sure that they do the toughest time there is. This is about retribution. And that's why these animals got convicted in state court and why they've also been convicted in federal court, despite Joe Biden's Department of Injustice trying every unethical and illegal maneuver that they could to make sure that these guys got cut a break. After the jury verdict came back guilty on all charges today, no less than Merrick Garland himself slithered out of whatever hole he's been hiding in, just long enough to hold a quickie fraud of a press conference where he shamelessly congratulated his own corrupt U.S. attorneys, and he was talking as if, why, they wanted to prosecute the case. He was giving the history of hate crimes in America and talking about the Department of Justice has been dedicated since the Civil War to holding civil, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's how he was talking at that little press conference. Little it was because he wasn't up there long and didn't say much. It was just the same gibberish and verbal vomit that you would expect from a worm like him, talking as if the Department of Justice was leading the charge when they were the main ones who wanted to dispose of the case and make it go away, and they wanted to go light on these murderers. Oh, the murderers, let them spell out what their punishment should be. We'll let them choose for themselves. We don't want to be too hard on them. And from the sound of things, he was only talking to 2 or 3 reporters, I guess, but Garland wasn't the only one who wanted to ignore this prosecution. When he stopped to take a few questions from the peanut gallery, the white media made it clear that they had as much contempt for the family of Ahmaud Arbery as Garland did. Their very first question was about Ukraine. Now, this press conference wasn't about Ukraine. Ukraine had nothing to do with it. That's not the reason he was there. But don't think for a moment, though, that these questions were not pre-vetted. That's how it is, especially when the president talks. They pretty much have been briefed on what it is the reporters are going to ask. And this was the white media making a show of how they resented seeing some of their target demographic being sent to prison. The second question that Garland got was about Trump, of course. Again, totally irrelevant. Who cares about what boxes of whatever were sent to Mar-a-Lago? That's not the reason why he was there. Garland was glad to get those questions. Those were softballs. Because none of those things actually indicted him or that gaggle of crooked lawyers that he's got working for him. Now, you did have at least one reporter who made half an effort, and it was only half an effort, to ask what about the family's criticisms, and it was more than criticisms, of the Justice Department's attempts to make a plea deal. What do you got to say about that? And you know what Merrick Garland did. He spewed some irrelevant gibberish, which the reporter refused to follow up on. He didn't give an answer at all. The reporter just like, okay, as long as you say something, let's move on then. And the white media is going to act as if Merrick Garland deserves some sort of a medal. But the family of Ahmaud Arbery isn't making that easy. No less than the Caucasian Nazi Network, CNN, and others, were forced to have to report and to show how Ahmaud's mother gave Kristen Clark and the rest of the DOJ trash a tongue lashing. Now, while they reported on it, the white media made sure not to discuss it. Okay, we'll show you that video in isolation, but we're not going to have a panel discussing that because we're not trying to say that the DOJ is deliberately refusing to bring hate crimes charges, even though that was one of the questions that Merrick Garland got. All these hate crimes happening, how come you very seldom bring any charges? Oh, no. As far as the white media is concerned, we're not really trying to make an issue out of that. We're not trying to do stories about that. And we definitely don't want to put any pressure on the Department of Justice. I mean, what do you think their job is? To prosecute people? This is the propaganda arm of white supremacy protecting the administrative arm. They don't want anyone dwelling on the fact that Biden's Department of Injustice was blatantly acting as co-counsel for the defense and was letting the murderers say what sentence they should get and where they should do their time. Now, when the family interfered with this subversion of justice, Biden's DOJ still stood up in court after all that and told the judge, just ignore the family. And they even had the nerve to say that the slap on the wrist that the killers were going to get, well, that would bring the family peace. You insult the family. You're trying to cut the murderers of their family member a break, giving them a cushy prison sentence, and then say this is going to give the family peace. The white supremacists at Fox, the worst white supremacists you could get out of Louisiana, couldn't have said that any better. Biden's DOJ went overboard to be totally disrespectful and disdainful toward that family. You have the people in court in total revolt against the Department of Justice, accusing them of lying, and what's the response of Biden's DOJ? To say, well, Judge, if you ignore these niggers over here, that will give them peace. All you Biden bots out there, where the hell are you at? Are you going to tell us that Ahmaud Arbery's mother should be glad that Biden's in office because Trump would have fought her every step of the way? The same way that she had to fight Biden's DOJ every step of the way? Go ahead and tell us how Biden is so much different than Trump. You told us that lie 3 years ago, and now that Biden's in office, we see that he's no different than the Orange Man was. But the difference is people are not in the streets actually making things hot. See, that's what Trump made unavoidable. When you have an open, blatant, in-your-face white supremacist who's in charge, you can't pretend as if he's just making mistakes or as if it's not as bad as all that. But that's the problem. When you had Trump in there, you couldn't go back to watching TV. Trump wouldn't let you ignore his brand of white supremacy. You had to do something. There's a lot of cowards out there. A lot of cowards, a lot of apathetic idiots, which is the same thing. You got a whole lot of people who gladly make excuses for white supremacy as long as it means they don't have to actually fight it. So that's why you wanted Biden in there, just as long as he gave you some cover to not have to do anything. That's what the Biden bots are about. Tell us all how different the behavior of Biden's Injustice Department is compared to what happened under Trump. I'll wait. Of course, the corrupt, racist former DA down in Georgia, Jackie Johnson, she's still unfinished business. But then again, so is Kristen Clark. And don't be surprised when Kristen Clark leaves the Department of Injustice, either to get a federal judgeship, no doubt that Biden will hand to her, or when the Democrats decide we need for her to run for some sort of federal office or maybe governor or something. And Kristen Clark's not the only one trying to get something for herself out of this. Mushmouth Crump congratulated his fellow ambulance chaser Sleaze Merritt, who Crump announced is running for Attorney General of Texas. I feel better already. This is the same Sleaze Merritt who said that there's a rape culture in Black America. This guy was on the Get R. Kelly bandwagon right along with the rest of the white media, helping to be part of that media distraction. So this clown's trying to climb the political ladder. That's all this is. That's why he was so eager to get in front of the TV cameras. He was trying to start a second career in politics. So for the few lame brains who actually told themselves that Crump or Sleaze Merritt were being sincere, now you can see it was all just a finesse. Sleaze Merritt just wanted to raise his own profile, get some media appearances, and then make himself into some sort of career politician. And do you think he's going to be going after the police should he become Attorney General of Texas? Do you think that all the laws that the Texas legislature has passed in these counties and school boards banning books and infringing blatantly on free speech, you think that he's going to be trying to knock those down? Of course not. He's just trying to find himself a position so he can get himself higher office. Something where the lobbyists or the donors will give more money. That's what Sleaze Merritt's looking for. But he's not running on a platform promising to put the murderer of a Tatiana Jefferson in prison. You know, like the corrupt DA Kevin Steele did up in Pennsylvania. He ran on a platform that he's going to put Bill Cosby in prison. You don't see Sleaze Merritt putting Aaron Dean in prison a plank of his platform. He's not running on a platform of, this is some unfinished business, vote for me and I'll put that guy away. Put me in office and I'll put him in prison. He's not running on a platform of going after the police at all. He makes a few minor mentions of black folks who the police have murdered, but he's not saying, I'm the guy who's going to go after these cops. When these DAs won't do it, my office will. He ain't running on that. He's not even insinuating it. Though he did make sure that he had plenty of photo ops showing that he was the counsel of record for Tatiana Jefferson's family. he did make sure to get that done. The murder trial of the animal who took her life has been postponed over and over again. It still hasn't started yet, by the way. She was murdered back in 2019. Here we are 3 years later, and they haven't even gotten around to jury selection yet. The defense team for this animal are doing everything that they can to try to forestall the trial, and the judge is right in there with them. Oh, I'll bet they are. I'll bet they don't want that trial to ever start. He's on trial for murder. That's the charge that he got, and the body camera video proves his guilt. He never once identified himself as police. And after he committed the murder, he refused to give a statement to his own brother officers in the police department. They were the ones investigating the murder. He should have wanted to speak to him. Instead, he was like, I'm not talking to anybody. The defense has been doing everything they can to stall for time, including demanding a change of venue. They claim that the murderer can't get a fair trial in Tarrant County. That's his freaking hometown. That's where he works. That's where his freaking neighbors are. If he can't get a fair trial there, you just say he can't get one, period. There's been no ruling made on that delay ploy, but that's not to say their strategy of stalling tactics hasn't been working, mainly because the judge has been allowing it. The excuse for this latest delay is that the defense is claiming that they've got 2 expert witnesses who will prove this guy's innocence, but the expert witnesses won't be available, and apparently these expert witnesses are so important that the defense can't find any substitutes for them. Well, we all know what that means. They pay some whore who works for the Fraternal Order of Police, who will get on the stand, who will claim to be some expert in the use of force, and they'll tell lie after lie saying that it was all legal and training, blah, blah, blah. They can't claim that the murderer was afraid for his life. That lie won't fly anymore. Nobody can use that. Not if you're a cop, you can't. So this is what they're doing now, and the judge is going along with it, so they're making it clear, hey, the fix is in. There's plenty of Fraternal Order of Police liars who will make whatever asinine claim the defense wants. Liars like that are a dime a dozen. My guess is the defense is at least one of these experts supposed to be black. That's probably what they're holding out for. Maybe even a black woman. And that's why they can't find a substitute. So the trial is scheduled to start in May. See, what they thought was that attention on the murder of Tatiana Jefferson would have faded by now. What they were hoping for was that public interest would have gone away, would have evaporated. That if the white media didn't have this on the front page, people wouldn't care. Public determination to see the thugs with badges punished would have subsided by now. They thought, surely it's been 3 years. Surely this was just a holdover from 2020. The public, surely they're not still trying to make sure that police get punished when they murder people. Why, people would have moved on from that by now, wouldn't they? I mean, that was just a fad, wasn't it? That was just a little bit of social upheaval. People kind of got caught up in something that seemed trendy, and now we can go back to business as usual, and everybody's going to let the cops get away with murdering black people, right? People are just going to go away. Except that hasn't happened.
Murderer, family at all? Killer, murderer, the devil.
How you sleeping that night, sir?
Former Officer Dean made no comment and left without further incident.
The public is as focused on this piece of trash as they ever were. The longer that animal drags this out, the more that he tries to stall for time, the more obvious it becomes to everyone that, yeah, even he knows that he's guilty as hell. Everybody wants to see him go down. Well, everyone except for the judge and the prosecutor and the white media. So they're stalling, hoping that the public will look the other way so they can offer a plea deal to some lower charge. But as we've seen with Biden's DOJ attempt to cater to the murderers of Ahmaud Arbery, these white supremacists and their bootlicks, they'll try it even in broad daylight with the whole world watching. The white supremacists at all levels were under pressure 2 years ago, and although those streets are not as hot as they were in 2020, what they're finding is that the energy has not subsided. And they're seeing that this wasn't some one-off. It wasn't a fad. It's not going away. But we've seen the judges trying to act as a firewall, the last ditch to stop the murderers from being punished. And now these racist judges and these DAs, as far as they're concerned, they're thinking that they're going to be closing the books on all of that. Well, this is a chapter that's going to be coming to an end. Yeah, people got a little bit worked up about some of these murders in 2020 that occurred then, but we're bringing an end to all of that. All that's behind us. We're going to see if it's safe for us to let the murderers walk the streets again. They want the last few years to just be a blip on the radar. a momentary deviation from the norm. We have to show that we are relentless, and that anyone in the police or in the courtrooms who try to act as accessories after the fact to these murderers, they're going to catch the same amount of heat as the killers themselves. We're going to make sure that these white supremacists losing becomes the norm. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Jasmine B., Milo Johnson, Kenyari Ratliff Hassin, Antonio Daniels, and Dark Black. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.